Welcome to Off the Clock, the webcast of employment attorneys at Miller Johnson, where we discuss what is happening in the HR world and provide practical insight and advice. We are your co-hosts, Rebecca Strauss and Sarah Willey, two employment lawyers who spend their days guiding employers through all of the challenges that workplaces offer. Good morning, Rebecca.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am fantastic because I have great news, and I think you share that news. It's been 2 weeks since my last vaccine shot, so now I can see you in person.
It's excellent, isn't it?
On the same couch. This is the closest we've been together.
Right.
In probably 14 months.
Feels a little weird, doesn't it?
It really does. And I thought people that might be viewing this instead of just listening might think it's weird too. So
excellent.
We should. And we actually got vaccinated together, right?
We're vaccine buddies, actually.
We are. That's something a lot of coworkers can't say about each other.
That's exactly right. Yes. So celebrating that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Rebecca, the coffee mug's clinking. So
yes.
Rebecca, what's our theme of the week?
Yes, there's always a theme of the week, isn't there? And this week it is definitely trying to figure out what we're going to do with employees in terms of remote work. Now that folks are getting vaccinated, now that at least in Michigan, we're looking forward to perhaps some changes in the workplace safety rules and who can be in person under state law and who cannot. And so clients are really struggling with this, right? Are we going to allow people to stay home? Are we going to require them to come back? Are we going to give them a choice?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And I will add, for any organizations that decided to start with a survey, I'm largely seeing those surveys being of almost no use whatsoever. Because people they get the responses back, and it turns out that everybody's all over the board and has lots of opinions that are largely based just on their personal circumstances, right? So Rebecca, what do we know about what other larger organizations are doing? Because I'm getting asked that question a lot, right?
Yeah.
What are other companies doing? What have you read about that? And what do you know about that?
I have been doing a lot of reading about that. I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And companies are all over the map. And to be honest with you, Sarah, I thought I would see a theme maybe in terms of industry, right? Like all the tech companies would be going one way, maybe traditional manufacturing would be going another, but that's not what I saw. So let's just go through some examples. Let's start with the companies that I've noticed that are requiring in-person work.
Okay.
At least somewhat.
Right.
And by the way, should we go through a little terminology lesson?
Right.
Because there's been all kinds of new words created during COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
One of them I hate, and I know you're about to say it, Rebecca.
What do you
aren't
think
you?
It is
The H word, hybrid.
Oh yes, any of us with children in school.
That's my least favorite COVID word, I think. But it now is being used in workplaces.
It's
being
used in workplaces.
Right.
So a lot of companies are not making the decision that everyone should be remote or everyone should be in the office. They're using this word hybrid, which the school started for us. Thank you, schools. That says that there's going to be a little bit of both. Some companies are using the term flex model. And while we're talking about words, let's talk about the word remote. There's one company that and we'll get to that in a minute when I go through the examples, and I think it's brilliant, where they said they want to change the term from remote to something else because the word remote itself indicates some sort of inequality between the people who are working at home and the people who are in the office.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're going to use the term remote here because, frankly, I haven't thought of a better one yet.
But we need a better word.
We do need a better word. Maybe lawyers aren't the ones to come up with it.
Yeah, right.
Honestly.
I think that's a fair point.
Maybe there's some communications experts, PR experts, et cetera, that are working on that. But I just mentioned that for our listeners to consider.
Or if our listeners have ideas.
Oh, please email us.
Please email us. All of you out there. I know there's at least 2 or 3 at this point. So all of you out there, please send ideas. But so what are you reading about what's happening now? What are the big companies doing?
Yep. So let's just start, and we're going to do a cross section of industries because again, I find that so interesting.
Okay.
Let's take Citigroup, for instance, a large banking organization, financial market.
I would think they'd be, let me get, why don't you say the name and then I'll guess.
Okay, good. I would love to prove you wrong.
A bunch of, it's one of your favorite things.
It is.
Citigroup, bunch of bankers, right? Yep. I would think that they would be working primarily from home.
They have decided they are going to an all hybrid model.
Okay.
Hybrid. So they're going to allow...
Yeah, what's their thought process behind that?
They didn't provide a lot of explanation, but they are going to allow a lot of flexibility. They see the value of in-person somewhat. They say fully remote is not going to work for them.
Okay.
But they understand the value in flexibility, and to your point, employee surveys, right? Like many of our clients have done employee surveys, and that people really want it. Let's talk about something near and dear to our hearts, law firms. A very large national law firm announced their plan. What do you think theirs is?
Well, I think, so in law firms, training younger attorneys is very important, right? And so I would think most law firms are going to be thinking that they need some level of in-person engagement in the office in order to help younger lawyers develop and also to directly engage with clients. So I'm going to guess the big law firm is either in-person or some sort of hybrid.
So this law firm is, they didn't call it hybrid, they call it a 60% model. So note that they have a specific number attached
only
to
a law firm would have an exact number.
Bright lines.
Bright lines. That's right.
We like bright lines.
Wow.
And if anyone has ever actually called us about employee discipline or expectations or performance, we do like bright lines, don't we? So the managing member of that large law firm said 60%, but the management is not going to dictate how that 60% is spread across the year. Or it's not even on a weekly basis.
So is that 60% in person or 60% at home?
60% in person. So for instance, if you have a large case, trial, project, where you're in the office 4 weeks solid, maybe you work from home the next 3 weeks. Or maybe you're in the office 3 days and home 2 days in the same week. They are not going to micromanage it.
Wow.
But they said they expect their attorneys to manage their lives in a way that they are in the office 60%. Note that the article did not mention the rules for staff. So I can't tell you whether the same rules apply to staff. Okay,
let me just think about that for a second and think that through. Because I think part of this is helping other organizations think through how something like that would work for them, right? So I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that the attorneys at that firm are not going to be required to declare in advance when they're going to be in the office or when they're not going to be, right?
I don't know that, but I would assume that.
Right. Because that, I think, would be cumbersome. So then I would think they're going to have to make their staff be present in the event that all attorneys are there. They just don't know from one day to the next, right, what the need for in-office staff support is going to be. That's an interesting culture consideration to be thinking about, I think, as an employer. If you have a model like that where the attorneys in the firm are allowed to have that flexibility, but maybe other employees, the staff, are not. Again, something I would be thinking about as the employer, or maybe encouraging the firm to be thinking that through as well.
Yep, I think that's absolutely true. But let's remember that employers can make distinctions among different types of employees, right? That the part of this that may make us uncomfortable is the income difference, right? Like higher income earners are allowed flexibility that lower income earners are not, and that may make us a little uncomfortable.
It's a culture issue. Sure.
But let's take the income out of it and just assume a same group of white collar workers earning about the same. Let's just assume no gender differences or anything else either. It is possible for employers to say this group of employees can work remotely, but this group can't.
Really has to be here in order to do their job. Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think a lot of employers are thinking about breaking up their workforce in categories. I think that has its own challenges, right, with employee morale for the folks that really would like to be remote and they see some of their colleagues enjoying some of the benefits of that, and then they cannot.
A lot to think about.
But it is something to think through.
Yeah.
It is an option. You don't have to make your entire workforce remote or your entire workforce in person.
So who else?
Right?
What else have you got for me?
Here's one I found really interesting. TIAA, another financial institution. And let me give you just a tad of background on this one. Because before COVID, they're one of the few large companies that was 30 to 40% remote. Before COVID.
Even before COVID started.
Yes. And before COVID started, so that was in 2018. They were 30 to 40% remote. In 2018, before the pandemic, they started changing that because they thought it was not helpful for their culture, collaboration, etc.
Interesting.
They were down to 15% remote.
Oh, wow.
Before COVID, just before COVID hit. Then, of course, COVID hit, and we know what happened. So what do you think they're doing now that they're going to have some options and flexibility?
That's the flip of it. Okay, so I'll make a guess. I don't think I've been right yet. So I will make a guess. I'm going to say they are going to be a hybrid model.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Well, that's the safe bet, right? I think most places are going to end up in a hybrid model. But they're going to continue to encourage in-person work.
They have said that 85% of their employees are very number-centric. Law firms and financial institutions.
Yes, right.
Go figure. 85% of employees will be expected to work 2 to 4 days in the office.
Yeah.
So
back to where they really were before COVID almost, right? That they're still heavily focused on in-person work, which is, so for them, what that says is their experience during COVID didn't change what they thought their own organizational culture required in terms of in-person work.
And I think what's interesting about them is they have more experience than some of the rest of us. Because they had a lot more remote workers even before COVID. For many of us, let's face it, us included, remote work really kind of hit us over the head with COVID. And that was our first experience with a large percentage of the office working remote. They already had that experience. Right.
And they decided to go the other way. Is there any indication of the why? Did they say what they thought did not go well for those employees or for the company?
The quote I saw was, it was hurting collaboration. Mm-hmm. And as we go through these examples, collaboration
That's the big word, right?
It's a buzzword.
That's the C word. That's the buzzword. That's exactly right.
That is definitely a buzzword. So maybe as employers are thinking about what to do, maybe one of the key questions to be having is, how important is collaboration?
Sure. Right.
And here's another buzzword, spontaneous.
Right.
How important is spontaneous collaboration to setting ourselves apart from our competition?
Yeah.
Does it matter? Does it not? I can imagine some workplaces where maybe it doesn't. And some where that is the very heart of what they are and what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So you can have scheduled collaboration remotely, like scheduled fun.
Scheduled fun. Scheduled Zoom meetings. Yes, that's exactly right.
So you can always have scheduled collaboration. Right. And maybe that does work in some settings. Mm-hmm. But in some, including TIAA, did I put too many A's in that?
That's all right.
TIAA and others, you'll find that they're saying that spontaneous collaboration
is very important.
Is very important to what they do.
So design, creativity, problem solving, things like that, right? I mean, things like this, right? That we're doing right now.
How did we start the podcast idea in the first place, Sarah?
Spontaneous
because we would bump into each other, literally bump into each other in the office and just start talking.
Right.
And oftentimes it would lead to excellent, problem solving ideas for our clients.
Yep.
So let's talk about tech companies.
Okay.
Because if there's anyone that knows how to get people wired up and able to work from home, it's the tech companies. So these,
I saw some of these. I was really surprised.
You might have already heard about Amazon.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What do you think Amazon's doing? What do you know Amazon is doing?
Well, I'd be cheating because I do know. I think they're primarily bringing everyone back, right?
Yes, you are right.
That was the big news.
Oh, and by the way, do you know approximately how many employees that is?
Oh my God. I can only imagine. 100,000?
Close to 1 million.
Stop.
1 million.
Wow.
Yes. A million people are impacted by that.
Going back into the office.
Decision. There are a number of employees have almost doubled in the past year, the way.
How
and
many
I think half of those are just for my house.
Yes. How many accommodation requests do you think they're going to get out of 1 million employees, right? Being asked to come back into the workplace. Anyway.
A heck of a lot. Maybe their employee ranks will go to 1,020,000 because they're going to hire 20 people just to process the accommodation
Excellent point.
requests. But they have explained that they want employees back in person so that teams can work together in an ad hoc fashion. Mm-hmm. So I said spontaneous was a keyword. They used the phrase ad hoc.
There's another one, yes.
Very similar, and they describe their culture as office-centric.
Oh, I like that.
So that may be something, another buzzword we might hear.
We're going to hear that a lot, yes.
Are we going to be an office-centric culture or a remote culture, whatever word our listeners suggest to replace the word remote? Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about another tech company, Apple. Have you heard about them?
I remember reading it, and I'm going to say I think they went the opposite direction of Amazon. I think they're focusing more on allowing employees to continue to work outside of the office setting.
I'm sorry to say you're wrong.
Oh, jeez.
Not that sorry.
I know.
But you are wrong.
Apple too, really? They're bringing everyone back.
Back in person. And the quote from Apple, which is so Apple, innovation is not a planned activity.
Oh, I like that.
Innovation is not a planned activity. Mm-hmm. So there we have innovation could be a synonym for collaboration. Obviously, it's not the exact same thing.
Well, it takes it one step further.
And there we have not a plan. So there we get back to the spontaneous ad hoc. So they're all using different words, right, to express the same concept.
Got it.
Collaboration, creativity, innovation, spontaneous ad hoc.
You know, I just want to say that I think even 3 months, maybe 6 months ago, if you had asked the two of us to predict what Apple and Amazon and these other organizations might be doing with regard to remote work, I think you and I and most of the HR world would have never guessed that they would be leaning much more heavily toward bringing everyone back into the workplace, which is just really interesting to me. And I have been observing that shift as well in terms of the people I talk to every day. There is, people are becoming weary of Zoom calls and the remote work experience. And even the people I talk to who enjoy some of the benefits of remote work, not commuting, flexibility, things like that, are expressing, boy, it is nice to be in the workplace, and I do miss that in-person collaboration, and I'm really sick of staring at people on a computer monitor, right?
Can we mention another downside of everyone working remotely? Let's switch to employers who are leaning more heavily towards remote work.
Okay, good.
But they do recognize the drawbacks. So let's start with another tech company, since we're in tech now. Let's talk about Slack.
Okay.
Slack is in the very business of helping people work remotely. And so they have used another word which I learned or I started using for the first time during COVID because of my kids' school, the word asynchronous.
Yes.
Had you ever used the word asynchronous before this
Never
year?
in my life.
Me neither.
But I hadn't used the words isolation and quarantine much either. So we have a whole new vocabulary.
So asynchronous, again, for anyone with kids in school or college, means you're not doing something at the same time, right? So an asynchronous class would be a pre-recorded class that you can watch at any time. We all don't have to be sitting down and doing it together. So Slack is going towards allowing anyone who wants to work remote. I'll just give you the answer on that one. Mostly because I just want to say what I want to say.
Well, you're tired of me being wrong. Yes.
It's not that. I just want to get to their point, because when I read this, I had a wave of relief wash over me, because I realized, yes, I've been feeling that, and I never articulated it. They said they're moving to remote work. They understand that when people work remotely, it is moving to more of an asynchronous world, which means an increase in written communication, which is more taxing.
Yeah.
And I thought,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Right? Amen.
Right.
The volume of email, right? Which I have felt in my own practice. You probably have too. Everyone listening, right, has seen, when they say written communication, that's a very polite way of saying email.
Right.
And there is so much more of it.
There's so much more. And I'll just say, as a litigator, that's potentially a huge problem.
Shout out to our litigation. Can I just do that?
Right?
I'm pausing.
I'm thinking,
because our litigation section just did lessons learned from litigation on a webinar, which was awesome. And they mentioned the problem with emails.
Yeah.
So I don't want to steal their thunder,
right.
But holy cow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
The more, I'll just put it simply, the more we communicate via email, right, within a company, the more likely it is somebody's going to say something stupid via email in person, right? That then will become discoverable in a piece of litigation. So if we really are only communicating in that way and not in person and having an in-person conversation, boy, that really scares me. I would say we need to be training our employees about how to do that appropriately and make sure that those expectations are set. Wow. Yeah.
But it's so much harder remote, right? You're less likely to pick up the phone and call someone when you know they're home.
Yeah.
And you know they're balancing a bunch of things when they're home, maybe, right? They might be picking up their kids or helping their kids with online school. So you're less likely. You don't want to interrupt them. I'm going to give a little preview to our next podcast, right? We're going to talk more about setting expectations.
Yeah.
About it. And maybe by having set expectations of when you need dedicated time to work, and within those hours you are free to take calls. Maybe that can help cut down on the instinct to email instead, because you won't feel like you're interrupting someone at home, because those are their work hours, right? That they just happen to be at home.
So Slack recognized that challenge with remote work, but still made the decision to focus on the remote model.
Yes.
So what was their thinking?
They have no solution yet that I read. I don't want to misrepresent. I'm sure their brilliant minds are hard at work at this. But in the material I read, I didn't see a proposed solution yet. But I'm telling you, just naming the problem, just saying it out loud, was a relief to me that other people were feeling and experiencing the same thing. And I think the same is true probably of their own employees that heard that from their leadership. We understand this is happening. We understand this is taxing on you. We're going to, work on ways, right, to solve that issue for you.
They'll go invent some cool things.
If there's anyone that can do it, they can. Yeah. Right? Okay, one more tech company, and then we'll get to good old-fashioned manufacturing. Twitter. What do you think Twitter? Well,
Twitter.
I already told you what category we're talking about now.
I forgot what category. I think Twitter's going to focus on working out of the office.
Twitter is going to be 100% remote.
Wow. 100%. That's the first company I've read that said we're going 100%. And we're all in remote.
And they're the ones who said we need a new word. Yeah. Twitter needs a new word.
Well, they don't need a new word if none of them are in person. It's just called working, isn't it?
They said they're
working wherever you are.
Their quote is, remote doesn't play into that feeling of equality. And when we just think of the word remote, just out of the workplace context.
It's an exception,
right? It doesn't sound like a compliment, does it? No. Well, Sarah's very remote.
Yeah, remote has a connotation of being an exception, right? You're working, but it's remote.
Or removed or not fully engaged.
Right.
I mean, that's what, when I think of, again, outside of the workplace setting, if someone told me, gosh, that's Sarah Willey, she's remote.
So you don't think changing it to working in sweatpants would be a better solution? No.
That is a great idea. Instead of saying in-person remote, just say sweatpants
casual working
or pants with a zipper and button. I'm not even going to say dress pants. Because we're in the office and we're in jeans.
Yeah, I like that. And it is true.
My jeans do have a
waistband.
So we can maybe do it on, I don't know. That's not my skill set, and I'm not going to pretend like it is. But
I wonder if we'll just stop talking about so much about where they're working. Again, going back to what I said initially, maybe we just call it working. And stop focusing on, stop talking so much about where it's being done. Well, and just say everybody's working.
Right. So something that occurred to me early on in COVID is offices like ours that have more than one location. For folks in a different location, let's just say we're in Kalamazoo, right? Okay, spoiler alert. This is Kalamazoo behind us. We're in Kalamazoo. We also have a Grand Rapids office and a Detroit office.
Okay.
For the folks in Detroit, they don't think of us as working when we're all in the office. They don't think of us as working remotely because we're not in the office with them in Grand Rapids. They just think of us working somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And it's fine, right? There's no, it has all worked for us extremely well, right? Having people in different office locations. So if we think about it like that, and again, we're going to get to this in our next episode, right? The concept of the home office as a satellite office. Mm-hmm. If we think about it like that, for organizations that already have more than one facility, we don't think someone's working less hard, less engaged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because they happen to be in a different physical office than us, right? No one's ever thought about it like that. So what's the difference if they're in their home office? Right? How is that different than just being in a separate facility or satellite office?
Yeah. I think that's right. Although what then organizations get stuck on, rightfully so, I think, is, well, that's kind of true, except that if everybody is in their own satellite office and never engage in person with anybody else who works for this same company, is that okay with us, right? Does that work for us? Is that our culture? Is that our model as a company? And so I think that's probably where we have a lot of clients who are calling us to talk about this. And that really, I keep going back to that fundamental principle for them, right? In order to figure out what you want to do, right? Whether you want to do what Apple's doing or Slack's doing or what Amazon's doing, et cetera, I think the starting place has got to be making that decision or understanding that organization's fundamental culture, right? To what degree is it going to drive success to have people having that spontaneous collaboration, right? And is that necessary? Are you a place where we need to train younger employees and that needs to be done in person? Are you a place where we need to be have the ability to be talking about problems and issues like you and I do in person, et cetera? And those are really deep organizational questions.
Yes. Let's expand on that a little bit, because I think that's really important to remember that one organization might do what's right for them, but yours, right, might be different for you. Let's talk about how important turnover is and the ability to recruit from a larger audience. Those might be two other factors that you want to think about when deciding what's right for your organization. So let's talk about recruiting first. Let's say you're in a small town, right? And recruiting, you not just have to find the right skill set, but you have to find someone that's willing to move to whatever city. Sometimes it can be a big town too, right? We've got two spouses working. Maybe the other spouse doesn't want to give up their job to move. If you're allowing remote work from anywhere, the sky is the limit. Rather, I should say maybe the globe is the limit.
Sure.
And where you can recruit talent from, that could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
If that is important to your organization.
I can tell you it has been. I mean, I know of many organizations just even right here in Michigan, in West Michigan, that the light bulb went on at some point during COVID that they could start recruiting and hiring talent from outside of their small town.
Yeah. Game changer.
Game changer.
Yes.
And I love that because it's created all sorts of fun questions and work for us.
Well, we always love those kinds of client problems.
Exactly. In that, what they also discovered when the second light bulb went off in their head is they now have employees working in potentially 50 states or countries, or maybe even other countries, and they probably need to figure out the employment law requirements, tax requirements, and other things in each of those states.
Right. And we are going to get to that in our next episode.
We'll
so
talk about
on.
that more. So that's a teaser.
Yeah, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty on those things. Today, we're just talking about the kinds of things you should be thinking about. That is certainly one of the things you should be thinking about. And retention,
I would think certainly.
Retention is huge.
And that probably weighs in favor of an organization at least having some sort of flexible or hybrid model, wouldn't you think? Because then that's that's the option that could possibly make everybody happy, whether you're an in the office person or a work remotely kind of person, if you have those options for everybody. So
one of the key predictors to whether an employee will stay long term, it's not salary, it's not title, it's whether they feel a personal connection with at least one other person at work. Call it a friend. I think the survey said friend, but really I would say a personal, intimate connection, friendship with at least one person at work. And if you are recruiting and hiring remotely and an employee only knows folks through Zoom, my own personal opinion, which others may disagree with, is it's awfully hard to build that kind of connection.
That's an excellent point, because I think there is a bit of an assumption now that that going remote is going to help with retention and recruiting.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because so many employees are enjoying that.
Yes.
But that is an excellent consideration that I think is important for everyone to keep in the back of their mind as they're weighing these options. And that may be true short term.
Right.
You may have happy employees now if you tell them, okay, you don't have to come back into the workplace, but you may down the road have significant employee retention concerns if they're not engaging with each other and they don't have that one person that they're connected with, right?
Those might be folks who already have those friendships and connections too, right? When we sent everyone home last March, right, everyone already had their friends or support network,
but I'm thinking
their mentors.
About new hires, though,
new
right?
New hires, exactly.
How are you going to engage them in a company, in a Twitter, right?
Right.
If nobody is working in person.
Can I just give you one more?
Okay.
Because it's a hometown hero. Okay. At least if we're talking about Michigan in general, Ford, and we haven't talked about a traditional manufacturer yet. So I do want to talk about at least one.
Okay, let me guess Ford.
Do you already know?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to say, so the first thing I'll say is obviously that the core of what Ford does is manufacturing, right? That's what it does. So I would think by far the vast majority of their employees, are in person because they have to be. They're doing the manufacturing work, right? They don't have the luxury.
You're talking about the production employees.
Yeah. They don't have the luxury of working remote, right?
Right. I don't want someone assembling my steering wheel remotely. I'll just put that out there.
I'd rather. So I guess I would think that Ford would be encouraging their office employees to come back if their manufacturing facilities have to be, or manufacturing employees have to be in person.
So they have gone the opposite direction.
Wow.
And so that's the answer. That's the spoiler. But they put out one of these surveys that you were talking about. And according to the article I read, guess how many of their employees said they don't want to return to the office?
Well, it must be a lot.
It is a lot.
I'm going to say 85%.
I'm going to help you. 95%.
Holy Toledo.
Said they did not want to return. I have no idea why that number is so high in surveys.
The commute in Detroit. I know why it's high.
I used to live in Detroit, still have family there. And the commute there can be absolute killer. So that could be a big reason, whereas in smaller communities like Kalamazoo, right, where even when I get stuck in rush hour, it's 15 minutes and I live on the outskirts, it's not, right, it doesn't take out hours of my day.
Sure.
Yeah, but that could be a reason. There may be other reasons that I don't know about. But that was the information Ford was presented with. So maybe that helps inform why they said, okay, we're going to allow workers not to return. Right? And that's not hybrid, by the way. They are allowing workers to choose to not come back at all. But now let's think about an issue we talked about a little bit earlier, the culture of production employees.
Sure.
Right? Not having that flexibility.
I'll be interested to see how that plays out, right? Whether Ford continues with that model long term and whether they see an impact on that culture, because that really does create, in my mind, the potential for a divide.
A bigger divide.
Between the employees who are coming to work, working on the production line and being asked to do that, and then the quote unquote corporate employees who are not. And I don't think that's to say a company can't do that. What I would say is there's probably a lot of hard work to be done.
Yes.
In terms of trying to bridge that and avoid a rift in that culture for Ford.
It's a challenge, right? An opportunity to solve a challenge. And they recognize it. They said, as Ford spokesman said, having blue-collar workers being required to work in person, but not white-collar workers, quote, may cause some negative perception. Close quote. So, I mean, no offense to you and me, but that's not something we came up with. That potential problem.
Sure.
Right? But I think everyone listening to this should think about that.
Should think, and that's a good example of the challenges. I mean, the decision is really organization specific.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to make a decision that's going to please everyone. And so if that's the way organizations are trying to make the decision, that's going to be a problem, right? I think they got to start with the culture. They need to decide who we are as a company and what's important. And then I think the key is communicating that clearly when they announce what the decision is, right? Here's who we are. And so here's what we're doing. And here's why.
That is so important. I think we should just close on that.
Excellent.
Mission driven and not survey driven.
Perfect.
Right?
All right.
Okay.
So next time we will talk about the specific requirements of remote work and talk about things like policies and legal requirements.
Policies.
Excellent.
We love talking about policies.
All right.
Okay.
Rebecca, have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Okay.